I have been cosplaying as Grell for about 10 years now, and this manga, along with also anime, Black Butler, is very near and dear to my heart because it's actually how I met my best friend. So here is how you turn yourself into Grell. For pretty much any cosplay, depending on if you're going to incorporate your eyebrows or not, you're probably going to end up gluing down a section of them. For this one, I ended up gluing the entirety of my eyebrow down, which is what I do for a lot of my different looks. The glue stick that I used was the Elmer's glue stick. It's the one that goes on purple, dries clear, and then I took this metallic surface here, pressed it down for my eyebrows, and got those flat. They do look a little wild, but the next step is covering them with some off red because my eyebrows are very dark. Using a multi-stick, going over it, the one that I'm using is white. It just helps to block out some of the additional color underneath. Then I'm using a flesh tone powder cosmetic. So all of the cosmetic that is powdered that I've used is eyeshadow. Putting that over, and it's going to further blend it. Then I am good to move on to my foundation. I typically use She Glam, and I use the color, from what I remember, it's porcelain. Great coverage, amazing stuff, and the best part is it's only about $10 for a container of it with a very generous amount. Now I'm using this sponge here, blending this out more and just getting an even tone. After I have the base down, I'm moving on to this. This is also from She Glam, and the color of this is kind of like an off gray. Now, if you've ever seen Doyen makeup, I suggest looking at some of that and seeing how you can sculpt your face. What I'm doing is I'm trying to get a bit of a triangular shape to my face. So putting that from my jaw down to my chin and chiseling out my nose, along with also putting those two lines by my mouth, which is going to pull my features in more. I'm also giving a very small half circle at the bottom of my nose, blending everything out and going from there. Now, Doyen makeup can be pretty, we'll say along the lines of cakey because there's so many different layers to it. What I try to do is I try to use liquid and then a very, very small amount of powder cosmetic. So after I blend this, only in certain areas am I going to go over with this powder cosmetic. That's going to just help further define the shadow from the light, along with also blend that too, because it's a shade that is in between the cool toned gray and also the regular foundation. I am also putting this onto where my nose, along with also over my eyes. Then I'm going to be using some of this white here, and I'm using my finger to spread it down. This is going to also help to elongate my face as well. 2 triangles underneath the eyes, little on the bridge of the nose, very small bit on the chin, and then a triangle in between the eyebrows. Blend that out with the same sponge that you had used before, or a different one, depends on what you want to do. I usually like to use the same sponge because it has some cosmetic that's already on it, which makes it easier to go and blend. So you can see here what that does is that brings some light into some of these different areas, like on my cheeks, my chin, and also my nose. Then going over that, I am using some of this white eyeshadow, just a very, very small brushing and dusting of it. Then I'm going back in with more of this gray, and I'm creating a triangle right between where my eyebrows and my eye is. Also going over my eyelid, the upper portion of the lid there, and putting some at the edge. Going back over where I had those lines before for my nose, further narrowing it, and blending it down slightly, and I'm using again the same color cosmetic. Pretty much what I'm doing is I'm just stacking the cosmetic, going back in with the sponge, further blending, and making sure I'm very lightly brushing layers of the cosmetic on. Something that is so important with cosplay makeup is doing a small crease cut, which pretty much what you do is you put some white liquid eyeliner or a lighter gray, put it into the corner of the eye, and blend it out slightly. Then you need to go over it with some white eyeshadow, press that in place, and that's going to help to set it, along with also just make a bit of a lighter separation between the layers. Now I'm using some red. I'm putting that on my bottom eyelid, right where the hairs and eyelashes are. I always find that with doing different looks, sort of like this one, the red tones help to accentuate the eyes. Then I'm going in with a paintbrush that I have some brown on, and I'm creating this larger bag to the eye that's going to make them look bigger. And for the eyeliner, you can see that I'm extending that off of my eye and up at a bit of an angle. That's also going to make my eyes look a lot bigger. And I'm not following along where my eyelashes are for the bottom. I'm extending that up and creating this pretty large looking wing-like structure. I'm extending that line down for where my inner lid is, and I'm also making these little tiny lines up at the edge. I suggest that you do have a reference up of Grell, of course, because Grell has some very long eyelashes that are drawn on for the actual character. So following the shape of the character's eye, it'll definitely help you to get more of what you want it to look like for the character. Now, after that has been drawn on, you can see I'm going back in with a bit of red at the corner, along with also it's an off gray, not a full black, to create some shadow at the wing. Sadly, my camera didn't want to focus there, but it did want to focus for the other eye, which you can see here. And I'm creating just a very small amount of shadow to kind of connect all the lines. I want a decent connection there, but I don't want it to be too crazy. I'm also wiping off some of the cosmetic that fell off before I go back in with some more white underneath there, which I did blend. This is my favorite tool. It's called the Brow Buddy. It helps me map out my eyebrows, which is amazing. Then I don't have to remove the cosmetic if I end up messing up my eyebrows, which it is one of the worst things that you have to do if you end up messing up an eyebrow. I'm sketching the eyebrow on, and I'm using some red cosmetic that I put onto a paintbrush. The stuff that I'm using is water activated. Eyeliner that is waterproof would work a lot better, but this is what I have. Drawing on the eyebrows, going in with this light brown kind of tan color right underneath the point of the eyebrow to further accentuate up a triangular shape to the eyebrow. Then I'm adding some of this off black gray to create more of depth and shadow there. Little lines up where the eyebrows are. And of course, narrowing the nose even more because we gotta do it. Grell does have a very thin nose, and my nose just isn't that thin, of course, because this is real life and not anime. At the sides of my mouth, I drew these little tiny lines. I'm using eyeshadow for this. I connected it at the sides, went back over my lips with some of this foundation, used eyeshadow to make kind of like almost a Cupid's bow shape, and a very small amount of eyeshadow underneath my bottom lip to create that subtle triangle. Use some of that gray for the philtrum, went back in with some of this white eyeshadow to create just a bit of brightness there over the top lip, which is going to also make my lips look a little smaller. I added some highlight too over the nose, different areas, and then I glued on these teeth, which are amazing. These are some of the best that I have ever had. But the thing is dental glue, that stuff, it's not pleasant. It's not awesome. If you do get teeth like this, it's probably best if you use the plastic beads to go and shape it, but it gets a little hard to talk otherwise. Now finishing off the lips, I'm using some lip stain. The stuff that I typically use is from Sushi Glow Cosmetics. I'm very lightly painting it on there and using my finger to further blend it just like such. I only painted it in the inner portion of the lips. You can kind of see there. Stacked it slightly. Used my finger again to go and blend it more. I could have gone over the full lip, but I wanted to have kind of a subtle look to them. I didn't want it too intense. Now for false eyelashes, so important when you're doing cosplay. It's going to make your eyes pop. You can either use little separate pieces or you can use full ones. Now, putting the wig on, I typically use 2 different types of caps. I usually use one of those knit ones, and then I use one of these solid ones. It just keeps everything in place, and it compresses my hair down even more. Then I'm good to put on this wig that I very gently styled. And then I can finish off the remainder of putting on this cosplay. Now, a lot of the stuff I already had just laying around, so it kind of is along the lines of a closet cosplay, but that's fine because I had a really cute red top. And I sprayed some of the hair in place, and there you go. There is me as Grell, which again, I've been cosplaying as Grell for the better part of about 10 years now. One of my favorite characters from one of my favorite animes and mangas.